Welcome to Same Surgeon, Different Light. This is part of the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Surgical Hot Topics podcast. My name is Cherie Erkmen, and together with Sara Pereira, we will meet cardiothoracic surgeons from across the spectrum of our rich community. We'll learn about backstories, career challenges, and what makes each cardiothoracic surgeon unique and valued. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Society of Thoracic Surgeons.
Same Surgeon, Different Light is brought to you by the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Career Center, where you'll find free access to cardiothoracic surgery jobs, career development tools, and professional guidance. Visit the STS Career Center at careercenter.sts.org.
Welcome, everyone. We're wrapping up Season 5 of Same Surgeon, Different Light and preparing for an exciting new slate of guests and stories for Season 6. Today, we'll talk about the networking in the community within cardiothoracic surgery. You know, Sarah, we spend so much time and effort distinguishing ourselves and becoming part of an elite group that we can find ourselves alone or isolated. And I found that belonging to a professional society like AATS, STS, and my favorite subgroup of the STS is the Thoracic Surgery Directors Association, that these professional societies help me both personally and professionally.
Absolutely, Cherie. It's been a real honor working with you this season on Same Surgeon, Different Light. A little personal story here. So if it was not for the STS, we would have never reconnected. I remember when we were friends taking biology together at Cal Berkeley. We graduated and went our own separate ways for about 10 years or so, and then found ourselves on the same workforce for STS. Do you remember when we were on the Workforce of Inclusion and Belonging meeting, and you texted me in the chat box and said, "Hey, I think we went to Cal together." And that was really cool and brought back a lot of good memories about what a small community we work in. So now you're a big-time professor of thoracic surgery at Temple University, and I recently transitioned to Indiana University in the Division of Cardiothoracic Surgery.
And I do remember that really warmly, and I have to correct you that I think it's more than 10 years, but we'll keep that quiet. So today let's talk about Dr. Joseph Sabik. He is the 61st president of the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. He is a cardiothoracic surgeon with University Hospitals Harrington Heart and Vascular Institute, chair of the Department of Surgery at University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center, and surgeon-in-chief at University Hospitals Health System. He was the Oliver H. Payne Professor and Chair of the Department of Surgery at Case Western, and the Sally and Bob Grease Distinguished Chair in Cardiac Surgery.
Cherie, these are incredible titles and successes for one surgeon. Dr. Sabik's exemplary career spans 3 decades and is marked by significant contributions to cardiac surgery, medical education, research, and clinical trials. He additionally earned his Bachelor's of Science in Life Sciences from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a medical degree from Harvard Medical School. His postgraduate training includes general surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital, as well as thoracic surgery residency at the Cleveland Clinic. He was later the chairman of the Department of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery at Cleveland Clinic before transitioning to university hospitals. It's such an honor to have Dr. Sabik with us today. Dr. Sabik, thank you so much for joining us today on Same Surgeon, Different Light. Throughout your career, you've been a tremendous inspiration for all of us in cardiac surgery. You not only demonstrated a steadfast commitment to advancing innovation in adult cardiac surgery, as a PI in the Excel trial, which looked at CABG versus percutaneous intervention for left main disease, and as an international expert in coronary artery bypass grafting. Your accomplishments within STS alone are too numerous to describe, as you've served on the STS Board of Directors, the Finance Committee, multiple councils, and your path truly represents clinical and academic excellence. So we're really interested in learning how you've navigated your path and who your mentors were that took you on this journey. So can you tell us how you initially got involved in STS and who your initial career mentors were that helped you create such early success?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm very honored to have the opportunity to talk to both of you as well as the STS and cardiothoracic community. I've been very fortunate. I've had absolutely wonderful mentors. How I began my journey with the STS was really with the former resident. I think I was coming back from a meeting with Torsun, and we had been general surgery residents together. And I think while waiting in the airport, we just had a conversation about how does one get involved in the professional societies. We were just, I think at the time, learning how to become cardiac surgeons. And he said, well, I'm the chairperson on I think it was the workforce on patient safety and quality. Why don't you join my workforce? And literally that's how it began. I joined the workforce and had the opportunity to work with other thoracic surgeons at the STS. And I just loved the camaraderie, the friendship, and the things that we were able to do together. And so I became, more and more interested in participating and helping out. I think that led to a stint on the database workforce and then the program committee, which I really had a lot of fun on, putting the program together. During that time, I've always had, like I said, just terrific mentors. Obviously, Tor helped me get on the workforces, but Doug Mathieson had always been a wonderful mentor for me in the STS. And as I suppose when I think about mentorship, I think I've been very fortunate and then I've had mentors in different areas. Bruce Lytle has always been a terrific mentor for me, both in the clinical pathway, and the academic pathway, and also in just kind of the personal pathway, helping me guide through life. I've had, Gene Blackstone help me so much on my academic career. I've had wonderful mentors in the professional societies. I already mentioned Doug Mathieson, but also Doug Wood and Mike Mack. And I think having been secretary really gives you some wonderful insight into the STS because you get to work with, so many fantastic presidents, and I've had that opportunity. So I consider them all friends and mentors as well, and have really helped me along my journey.
That's a pretty high-powered list of mentors. I think that it's difficult for people to just get that first step into the STS. So, what would be your advice for someone who may not have a lot of mentors or may not know how to leverage those mentorship relationships? How can people like this get their first step into the STS?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Actually, it's a question I'm asked an awful lot. I think the first thing I suggest is to volunteer. As you know, you can volunteer in late summer, early fall for different workforce positions, both at the resident level and early faculty level. I think the key is though is to find something you're really interested in. It's never a good idea just to get on a workforce and then not participate. You want to get on something that you're excited about and interested about and are going to participate and contribute. So the first step is to find that area. Then I think to volunteer. And I have to tell you, my experience with the STS is that, people want to help each other out. We really want to be, the society that includes everyone and where people feel they belong. And so I suggest, pick up the pick up the phone and call the workforce chair or call somebody else who you may have a relationship with on that workforce. Let them know that you're interested, why you're interested, and then get them to advocate for you. Because, when the appointments come, the leadership team is really looking at, has this person volunteered? Do they have support from other STS members, particularly people, in that workforce? And if they seem to make the effort, because we believe that's going to help contribute as to whether they are really going to participate and contribute in that future. And then when you get on that workforce, do a really good job, because that's how you get noticed. And you get noticed by your fellow colleagues, but you also get noticed by the staff. And so then when we're looking for people who we need to do other things, if you've been a contributor, someone who's shown up, you're going to jump to the top of the list. And that's how I think that if you really want to be involved in professional societies, you can jumpstart your career. I have to admit, you're right. I was fortunate, but I think I reached out to a lot of those people for help, during the times during my careers. I mean, people don't come to you and say, "Hey, I have this research project for you." You go to them and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And so I think you do have to be, a little bit forward, but you have to do the work and you have to show up.
I thought you brought up a really great point that if you're not part of the workforce, there are always a lot of task forces with directed jobs that need help and volunteers. So that's really an important point, that you may not be a workforce member yet through the process, but there's oftentimes a lot of work that can be done. So, an interesting question. Have you ever been on a workforce or a task force where you did not feel like you had the expertise to contribute? Ever?
Well, that's a great question. I think that I have asked for help in those situations. Um, I remember when I first got on the national database workforce, there's so much going on. And, there have been people on that workforce who've been on that workforce for years. So you're a little bit of a disadvantage at first, but you just got to, again, I know it sounds simple, show up, really pay attention. Then there's always the after hours, going to dinner, while you're at the STS with people on that workforce, getting involved in projects. And all of a sudden you find out that you have the expertise and the knowledge to really contribute, to that workforce. But you do need to do your homework. Absolutely.
Dr. Sabik, I wish I had your advice early in my career. I spent about 10 years hiding, afraid of going up to people at meetings and volunteering for various workforces. And I remember when I got brave and joined the workforce on diversity, equity, and inclusion years ago, I remember seeing Cherie, and Cherie said, "Oh my gosh, we went to Cal together." And then I think we were both just really motivated to join more and more workforces. But I think that initial step is so scary, which brings me to the next topic that I wanted to really give STS thanks and give you thanks for supporting our scholarship programs, which have been really, really very dear to my heart over the past few years. And not only do we have the 20th anniversary of the STS Looking to the Future Scholarship Program this year, but we also have the second annual You Belong scholarship program that STS really sponsored out of just pure gratitude this year for us. And so the applications for our You Belong scholarship program actually go live today. And applicants have until November 16th to submit their applications. And so I wanted to hear if you could picture yourself back as a medical student who wanted to meet yourself or Dr. Wood or Dr. Sun at the meeting this year. The students always ask me, how do I walk up to them and talk to them? So what advice
Oh, very
would you give the
easily.
students?
Walk up and introduce yourself. I have to tell you, I was just at the Canadian Cardiovascular Society meeting, and a young woman that I had appointed to one of the workforces at the STS last year came up to me and said, Dr. Sabik, we've never met. I'm so and so, and you appointed me to the workforce, and I just wanted to say hi and thank you. I can't tell you how great that made me feel. We want to know everyone, and we're so happy, when people do that. As I said earlier, The Society of Thoracic Surgeons is really about inclusivity and belonging. We want people to feel comfortable, and we know taking that first step can be a little bit hard. My wife will tell me at times that sometimes I'm intimidating. I said, Ellen, I'm 5'8", 150 pounds on a day that I ate, and I don't look at myself as intimidating. And so none of us want to be that way. We want people to come talk to us. And so I would say all the STS leaders are like that. And so I do understand that it can be a little bit nerve-wracking about going up to someone and talking to them, but please do. You know, don't be frightened, don't be nervous. Go up, introduce yourself, talk to them about something that they may be interested in, that you're interested in. Before you know it, you're exchanging contact information and hopefully soon working on a project together or figuring out how we can sponsor people or mentor them and things that they would like to do. So I encourage everyone to do that. And I can't tell you how happy that makes me feel when I have the opportunity to meet other STS members.
So, just as we're asking the medical students to have some courage to take the next step to advance yourself and the people around you and your community. So, you are doing the exact same thing as you step into the leadership position with the STS. So, can you tell us a little bit about what concerns you or what you're excited about, or just kind of your that early step of courage as you assume your leadership position?
Well, there are so many wonderful things, that the STS is doing that although I hate to use the word distractions because distractions tend to trivialize everything that's going on in the world today. But I try to look at them, as distractions and then just kind of work with the leadership team and our management team to do what's best, for our specialty, and our society. So it's whether it's putting together the best annual meeting we can put together, whether it's putting together um, the best coronary congress or valve meeting or advocacy day, or thinking about other opportunities the STS has to partner with other sister societies such as the American College of Cardiology or the European Association of Cardiothoracic Surgeries to help our specialty and help our surgeons. So I just try to do my best and continuing to focus on all the opportunities we have, understanding that all of these other things are going on and we have to do our best to, maneuver through them. But I feel by doing what's best for our society, our specialty, our membership, it keeps me very, very motivated and very excited about our future.
And how do you leave your own personal stamp on this? We've had a series of wonderful annual meetings, a lot of initiatives that happen between meetings. What do you see will be your legacy, if you will?
That's a very, very tough question. I can't tell you that I'm planning on what my legacy will be because I'm not. What I'm trying to do again is what I said a little bit earlier is I want to help the STS and our profession advance in many ways. One of the things that I'm extremely excited about is our annual meeting. And I think I've said this several times during the past year. I think it's one of the most important things we do as a professional organization because it's the opportunity for us to all come together and kind of set the vision. One of the things we did for this meeting is we actually gave it a theme. And anybody who's on this podcast and was willing to listen to me as I thought through this, I want to say thank you once again, because anybody who would listen to me, I did talk to them. And you may know the theme, and it's teaching for tomorrow together. And maybe I can spend a little bit of time, talking about that. I think it's very important that our specialty looks to the future. And so that's what tomorrow is. And what does tomorrow look like? what are we going to be doing as surgeons, as leaders? What technology do we need to have? What skill sets do we need to have to prosper in the future? And then the other word that is incredibly important for me is the word together. None of us does this alone. We do it because we have each other and we all lift each other. And so as I had the opportunity to, pick the speakers, for our meeting, it's really centered around those ideas. I'm very excited about our lead speaker, Shola Richards. He's a best-selling author who's talks a lot about how do we work together? How do we make our workplace civil? And how do we treat each other in the best way so that we can all move forward? We also have Jerry Francona, an incredible leader manager who's loved by his players, who is, you know, really everywhere he's gone, he's brought success. I think we can learn a lot from someone like that. And then also one of our speakers, Ben Aldis, who's a Peloton instructor, because I personally believe if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others and succeed. So this togetherness, this thoughtfulness about working together to build tomorrow is something that's very important, for me. And if you were to say a legacy, I don't know if it's a legacy, but it's a way that I want to contribute to our annual meeting. We spent a lot thinking about governance, over the year to help the how our society leaders help our members and help our workforces succeed. The STS is doing amazing things, and we're going to showcase a lot of that at the annual meeting, whether it's guidelines or expert-based consensus documents, or really cutting-edge research, bringing together our database and our research activities to really, again, talk about what the future of our surgery, should be like. And then also, how do we develop partnerships with our sister societies, partnerships with industry, so that, again, we can build tomorrow together. I don't know if that's quite a legacy, but that's something I've been very focused on this year.
That sounds so great. It makes me really excited for January to arrive, Dr. Sabik. So
Thank you.
I think what you said was that you and Ben Aldis will be leading the Peloton workout for STS one morning.
Well, we actually kind of thought a little bit about that, but we couldn't quite work out a workout. But Mr. Aldis will be talking to us about health. We couldn't quite work out a Peloton ride, which would have been a lot of fun, obviously.
That would have been so much fun. I think we all know that behind every really successful surgeon, our careers haven't always been easy. I think on paper, you look like the perfect surgeon that everybody wants to be. But can you tell us a little bit about your largest challenges in your career or anything that's been really particularly hard for you to face that you've had to reroute or change some things?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you for bringing it up because obviously, nothing happens without hard work, and we've all had setbacks. Whether it's the first patient we couldn't help, or the resident that we tried and didn't succeed, or even that paper that we spent so much time on that was rejected from from every single meeting we submitted it to. I think in many ways I'm kind of very happy with the way things turned out. I can't tell you that it was a straight ride. It was really a bumpy ride. Um, I think one of the things that really helped me, and I actually give this advice to a lot of my residents, and I don't think we can do everything all at once. And when I first started my career, I really kind of focused on becoming a surgeon and did a lot of focusing just becoming a comfortable surgeon in the operating room because I felt before I could teach others or really write about it, I had to know about it, how to do it myself. And then after I felt comfortable with that, it was kind of at that point that I really wanted to do a lot more academic work. And that's actually when I really started writing and presenting and thinking about what I was doing. And it was kind of after a period of time at that point, they said, okay, now it's like time to give back. Now I have to help others do what I do. And it's kind of when I became very interested in education and took courses on teaching and eventually became, the program director, and then had the opportunity to take that kind of leadership that I had learned, whether it was in the OR or through doing research projects and mentoring residents, then to thinking about how do you run a service. But I don't want you to think it was like kind of a straight, easy line. It was a line full of setbacks and, making mistakes and falling down and then doing my best, to get back up. But I think for the most part, I would lie if I told you I'm not a driven person. I like to succeed and do well, and I think I hold myself and my team to a fairly high standard, and just want to get better. And I think that's what's helped me, drive through this. In all honesty, I have a wonderful wife and a wonderful family. For those of you who don't know, my wife herself is a very successful cardiologist and is actually governor and president of Ohio ACC and sits on the ACC board. So she's fairly busy herself, but has been incredibly supportive. And I hope I've been supportive in her career, as well as she's been supportive in mine. We've, two wonderful children. But it takes work, in all honesty, and I don't want to pretend it was always easy, because there were times where it's been tough, no doubt.
I'm going to press a little bit more on that question about having two children, a wife who's also successful, and then all of the things you listed: program director, successful surgeon, researcher. What did you do? Is there any piece of advice that you can give to all of us about how do you accomplish all of these things? How did you accomplish all of these things?
So I think one thing that's always been important to me is focus. To understand what's important and focus on those things. I'm going to bring up that word distractions again. I think in life there are a lot of distractions and a lot of things we just cannot control. We do have to adjust to them and do our best. But like when I'm in the operating room, my presence is in the operating room. We're going to do the best to take care of this patient. I'm going to do my best to teach my residents and other team players, and I'm going to be the best leader I can be. When I'm home, I'm going to be the best father and husband I can be. One of the things my wife and I have done, because, life is busy, and if you don't plan, it'll go by very, very quickly. I love baseball. I think she's learned to love baseball because I do. So we get, weekend season tickets to the Guardians. And so that's time that we spend together. She likes shows more than I do. So we get the yearly series to Playhouse Square, which is a great performing place, here in Cleveland. It's kind of like we have designated planned date nights. And, so we do that to keep our relationship strong. And we do our best to be present, at those times. When we go on vacations, it's always a family vacation and, with our children. Although they're older now, they still, I believe, enjoy coming with us. And so we're all present, at those times. So I think the answer is when you're doing something, be present there. Try to avoid the distractions as best you can. Plan ahead so that all of those things that are important to you, that the people around you know that that they are important to you as well, whether it's your patients, your family, your research team, your residents, and do your best to minimize those distractions that can kind of take you off course as best you can.
That's really interesting that you say that, because we often pride ourselves on being multitaskers. Like, oh, we're going to
I'm
do
a
this and this and
lousy
that.
multitasker.
That's
I will tell
very
you, I am
interesting.
I apologize for interrupting. I am a lousy multitasker. I don't do multiple things well. And I think I bother some people because if I have a big project coming up and then there's another big project coming a few weeks later, I have to finish the first one before I start the second one. Otherwise, I don't find I do either of them very well.
That's great. And it also, aligns with the idea of focus and exercise and really uh, taking control of your thought process with what you're doing and being present there. So I really love that. I think that we also want to look a little bit deeper, and we didn't talk about your background, but I would really love to hear more about how you came to these principles of life and balance. And was that from your own experience as a child?
I don't know. I've always considered myself a lifelong learner. I'm very quick to change if I find something's not working. I suppose if I go in my background, I suppose I never really knew whether I was going to be in medicine. I mean, when I was young, I really was very good and enjoyed science and math. And I suppose that, drew me to MIT where I went to college. And I was very fortunate to work with in all honesty, a Nobel Prize winner who was just wonderful to me. And it was right around the time of genetic engineering. And I always loved to work with my hands. And there were things that we didn't have in the lab. And so I would literally go to the hardware store and build stuff. And he would always tell me that I should become a surgeon because I was so good with my hands. And I think, my love of science and wanting to help others is what probably really drew me to medicine and healthcare, and then obviously surgery. I fell in love with cardiac surgery because it just seemed amazing to me. You could take someone and do these incredibly complex operations. They would come to the intensive care unit, and you'd have all this information that helped you take care of them. And 6 hours later, they were sitting up extubated, talking to you. And to this day, it still amazes me and how I love it. But I just think it was probably just, trial and error and understanding what works for me and what doesn't work for me. As I said, I'm not a good multitasker. I try to do, one thing, focus on that, do it the best I can, and then, try to approach everything that I'm doing, in that fashion. And I think that was just probably a learned response of what works for me.
Dr. Sabik, I think that you wrote your presidential speech on this podcast. So what I heard was awesome. It was focus, be present, avoid distractions, and don't multitask.
Some people
Which
might
is
disagree with the last one.
which is really great. So thank you for your advice and your words of wisdom. And we really appreciate having you on the podcast today.
Great.
We do have one last question that we ask every guest that's on our podcast this last season.
Okay.
So first, we'd like to thank STS for hosting our Hot Topics podcast series. As we move on to season 6 next year, we'll think of a new question. Where do you see our specialty going in the future? Or should we wait until the STS meeting in January to find out?
You know, I always joke around. Anybody who wants to predict the future is a little bit delusional. But anyway, I'm very excited about our future. I mean, I obviously can speak mostly, being a cardiac surgeon. And I tell my residents, I said, when I graduated, finished training, if you could do a straightforward CABG, an aortic valve replacement, and a mitral valve replacement, you could get a great job. That's not true today. There is so much that is expected of our trainees, whether it's all the exciting things that are happening in aortic surgery or minimally invasive robotic surgery or valve surgery, whether it's endovascular work or open work or, all arterial grafting. I look at all of those as just incredible springboards, for our future. I think it can be, though, at the same time, a little overwhelming for someone. And so that's why I think it's important for people to find, what they like and, really dive into that and really kind of expand that area. For me, obviously, it turned out to be coronary surgery, and all arterial grafting and ways of improving the long-term outcomes. Because I think as we look at surgery today, there are a lot of competing things. And those competing things are very good. If we look at coronary disease, medical therapy is so much better. Percutaneous therapy is so much better. So for somebody to have heart surgery, I have to be offering something that they can't get from those others. So I have to be offering better long-term results. So that to me is arterial grafts. I also have to do it with very, very low risk to the patient, so the patient can't be bleeding, the patient can't be having complications. So we have to employ, all the tools we have to make that operation as safe. But I think we can apply that to all the different, specialties. So I think our future is incredibly bright. I think the things we're going to do, we're going to do them with much lower risk and much better long-term outcome for our patients, because that's how we play our part in kind of this continuum of care of the diseases we treat.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Sabik. It's such a pleasure to have you and to spend this time with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to both of you. It was fun.
This has been Same Surgeon, Different Light, a podcast brought to you by the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please rate it 5 stars and let your friends, trainees, and colleagues know about it. On social media, you can use the hashtag #TheFaceOfCT Surgery. And for more information about the Society of Thoracic Surgeons, you can go online at sts.org.